You don't keep forgiving them because you're strong. You keep forgiving them because you're scared of what comes after. I am not going to tell you what you want to hear today. There are enough videos for that. What I am going to say is what you need to hear, even if it is uncomfortable, especially because it is uncomfortable. Think about the last time you let something go. Picture where you were. Maybe you were sitting in the passenger seat of a parked car. Maybe you were standing in the kitchen washing a coffee mug, staring blankly out the window. Someone you care about had just crossed a line. They had just taken a cheap shot, ignored your needs, or expected you to clean up their mess for the 100th time. You felt the heat rise in your chest. You had the perfect response ready. It was sitting right there on your tongue. It would have been entirely justified. But instead of saying what you actually wanted to say, instead of letting your anger take up space in the room, you took a deep breath. You forced a tight smile. You told them it was fine. You decided to be the bigger person. You walked away from that interaction telling yourself you handled it well. You told yourself you were mature. You told yourself that causing a scene would not have solved anything anyway. But notice how your body actually felt. Notice the tension locked in your jaw, the heavy sinking stone in your stomach. Notice how the words you wanted to say echoed in your head for the next 3 hours. You know exactly what I am talking about. This is the exhaustion of being the understanding one, the peacemaker, the person who always sees the other side of the story. You have spent your entire life mastering the art of the excuse, but you do not make excuses for yourself. You make them for everyone else. If you are in your 20s or 30s, you feel this as a constant, suffocating pressure. It is the colleague who constantly drops their unfinished work on your desk because they are overwhelmed. And you take it because you want to be a team player. It is the friend who only calls when their life is falling apart. They drain your energy for 2 solid hours and then hang up without ever asking how your day was. You convince yourself they just need support. You convince yourself you are being a good friend. But every time you look at your phone and see their name, your stomach drops. Every time you hang up, you feel completely empty. And if you are older, if you are in your 40s, 50s, or beyond, you know the true terrifying cost of this pattern. It is not just a heavy feeling anymore. It is a quiet, devastating grief. You look back at a marriage, at family dynamics, at a career, decades of keeping the peace, decades of swallowing your tongue so the boat would not rock. You absorbed the anger, the immaturity, and the selfishness of everyone around you. You thought that if you were just patient enough, they would eventually see your sacrifice. You thought your endless patience would eventually earn their respect, but they never did. They just got comfortable with your silence. You did not buy peace. You just bought a lifetime of being overlooked. Let us look closely at that phrase, be the bigger person. Have you ever noticed who usually says it? It is almost never said by the person who was wronged. It is said by the person who did the hurting. Or it is said by the bystanders who just want the discomfort to end. They do not want justice, they want quiet. When society tells you to be the bigger person, it is not actually asking you to be moral. It is asking you to be convenient. Your anger is inconvenient. Your demand for respect creates friction, and friction requires work to resolve. So they hand you a fake medal called maturity. They tell you how strong you are for letting it go, but that medal is a muzzle. You have built an entire identity around this. You pride yourself on not being petty. You pride yourself on your ability to forgive. But what you are calling forgiveness is often just conflict avoidance in a nice suit. True forgiveness requires acknowledging the debt. It requires looking the person in the eye and saying, "You hurt me, and I am choosing to release you from that." What you are doing is pretending the hurt never happened at all. That is why you are so incredibly tired. It takes an enormous amount of physical and mental energy to maintain a lie. And every time you pretend you are not angry when you actually are, you are lying. You are lying to them. And worse, you are lying to yourself. You force your mind to constantly translate their disrespect into a language you can tolerate. You tell yourself they did not mean to ignore you, they are just stressed out. You tell yourself they did not mean to insult you, they just have a blunt sense of humor. You do their emotional homework for them, but the body keeps the score. You can tell your mind whatever you want. You can paint the situation in the most noble, forgiving light possible, but your nervous system knows the truth. Your nervous system knows you were attacked. It knows you were diminished. It prepared you to fight back. It gave you the adrenaline. It gave you the anger. And what did you do? You swallowed it. Where do you think that anger goes? It does not just evaporate because you decided to take the high road. It sinks into your bones. It turns into a low-grade, constant hum of resentment. This is why you snap at the people who actually love you. This is why you feel irritated by small, meaningless things. This is why you wake up exhausted before the day has even begun. You are carrying a mountain of unexpressed rage disguised as patience. Think about how this actually plays out on a normal Tuesday afternoon. You are sitting at a table with someone. They make a passive-aggressive comment about your life choices, a little dig, small enough for them to deny if you call them out on it, but sharp enough to hit the nerve exactly where it hurts. You feel the heat rise. You have the perfect response ready. It would be entirely justified, but in that split second, your brain runs a desperate calculation. If I say this, things will get awkward. They will get defensive. We will have an argument. I will have to manage their emotions on top of my own. So you swallow it. You force a polite smile. You change the subject. You tell yourself it is not worth the energy. But later that night, you are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The conversation replays in your head on a brutal, endless loop. You think of all the things you should have said. You feel the anger burning in your chest long after the other person is fast asleep. They get to rest. You have to wrestle with the ghost of the confrontation you avoided. You protected their comfort at the expense of your own peace. This is the great illusion of being the understanding one. You think it makes you safe. You think that by never demanding anything, by never pushing back, you are securing your place in people's lives. You believe that your infinite patience makes you indispensable. You tell yourself, if I am the easiest person to be around, if I never cause trouble, they will never leave me. But human nature does not work that way. People do not respect what they can trample without consequence. When you constantly shrink yourself to accommodate the bad behavior of others, you do not inspire their gratitude. You inspire their contempt. For those of you who have lived with this for decades, this is the hardest truth to look at. You gave them your best years. You offered them a blank check of forgiveness. You thought you were building a foundation of deep, unshakable loyalty. But look around. Are you respected? Are your needs prioritized? Or do people just expect you to handle things on your own because you have always been the strong, silent one? Because you are the one who never complains. You have to understand that this pattern is not an accident. You were not born this way. You were trained. Somewhere along the line, you learned that your anger was dangerous. You learned that love and acceptance were conditional on your compliance. Maybe you grew up in a house where the adults were volatile and your only survival strategy was to be invisible, to be the good kid, the easy kid, the one who never needed anything and never caused a problem. You took that childhood survival strategy into adulthood, and you called it maturity. You dressed up your fear of abandonment in the clothes of moral superiority. Being the bigger person is supposed to mean rising above petty squabbles. But you are not rising above anything. You are just being buried underneath it. Every time you smile through disrespect, you are digging the hole a little deeper, and you are the one holding the shovel. We need to look very closely at what is actually happening inside your head when you make this choice. Because the story you tell yourself is that you are acting out of love. You tell yourself you are acting out of patience or wisdom or grace. But that is only the surface, because underneath that, the truth is much darker and much more uncomfortable. There is a reason this keeps happening, and it is not what you think. Now apply that to yourself, not to them, to you. Up until this point, we have been looking at the people who cross your lines. We have been looking at the people who take advantage of your silence, and it is very easy to stay there. It is very comfortable to look at their flaws, but this is where it stops being about them. Turn that around for a moment. Why do you stay silent? You tell yourself it is because you are empathetic. You tell yourself that you can see their pain. You say things like, they had a really hard childhood, or they are just under a lot of stress right now, or they do not actually know any better. You build a beautifully detailed psychological profile of the person who is hurting you. You do all the heavy lifting to excuse their behavior. But here is what nobody says, and what you need to hear. You are weaponizing your empathy against your own self-respect. You are using your ability to understand someone else as an excuse to completely abandon yourself. You are not staying silent because you are full of compassion. You are staying silent because you are full of fear. Think about the physical sensation of conflict. Think about the moment right before you tell someone that they crossed a line. Your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, your chest feels tight. Your nervous system is screaming at you that if you speak up, you are going to destroy the connection. You do not want to feel that physical discomfort. You do not want to face the awkwardness. You do not want to manage their defensive reaction, so you choose the path of least resistance. You choose to absorb the blow. And then you wrap that fear in a pretty bow and you call it being the bigger person. If you are a younger listener navigating your career or modern relationships, you know this fear intimately. You are terrified of being labeled as difficult. You do not want to be the person who ruins the vibe. You do not want to be the demanding partner or the uncooperative employee. So you laugh off the disrespectful joke. You take on the extra project without extra pay. You accept the bare minimum in your relationships, convincing yourself that your endless patience will eventually magically transform them into someone who treats you right. You are paying for their comfort with your own sanity. And if you are older, if you have been running this script for 20 or 30 years, the fear is so much heavier. Because if you admit that you should have spoken up 10 years ago, if you admit that your silence did not protect your family but only enabled the people who hurt you, then you have to face a devastating reality. You have to grieve the decades you spent playing dead. You have to look in the mirror and admit that you handed over your one precious life to people who did not value it. That is a terrifying realization. It is much easier to just keep being the bigger person. It is much easier to keep the mask on. Go one layer deeper and something shifts. Let us look at the mechanics of human behavior. People do not repeat a behavior for years unless they are getting a reward from it. Every action has a payoff, even the ones that hurt us. So what is your payoff when you let someone disrespect you? When you swallow your anger, what do you actually get out of it? You do not get their respect. We already established that. You do not get true peace. You just get a quiet house filled with resentment. So what is the hidden reward? Now hold that thought, because what comes next changes everything. Here is the truth you do not want to look at, the truth you hide from everyone, including yourself. You do not tolerate this because you are good. You tolerate it because you are addicted to the moral high ground. You prefer playing the noble victim rather than being an ugly resistor. Read that again in your head. There is a quiet, secret arrogance in being the bigger person. When you sit there in silence, taking the hit, absorbing the unfairness, you are secretly looking down on the person hurting you. You are looking at them and thinking, I am better than you. I would never act like that. I am more mature. I am more evolved. You are hoarding resentment like currency. Every time they let you down, every time they take advantage of you, you make a silent deposit into your bank of moral superiority. You build a massive ledger in your mind, a ledger of all your sacrifices, a ledger of all their failures. You like that ledger. It makes you feel safe, because as long as you are the victim, you are innocent. As long as you are the one being wronged, you never have to look at your own flaws. You never have to take responsibility for your own life. You get to be the flawless martyr. This is the darkest part of your own mind. It is the part of you that actually wants them to fail you. Notice how that feels. Notice the resistance rising up in you right now. You want to argue with me. You want to say, no, I genuinely just want peace. I genuinely just want everyone to be happy. But if that were true, you would demand honest relationships. And honest relationships require conflict. Honest relationships require two people standing on equal ground, telling each other the truth. You do not want equal ground. You want the pedestal. When you always play the bigger person, you are refusing to get into the mud with the rest of humanity. Fighting back is messy. Standing up for yourself means you might raise your voice. It means you might say something you regret. It means you might become the bad guy in their story. And you are absolutely terrified of being the bad guy. You would rather be destroyed quietly than defend yourself loudly. You would rather slowly bleed to death emotionally than risk having blood on your hands from fighting back. This is where it gets interesting and uncomfortable, because this supposed kindness of yours is actually deeply insulting to the other person. Think about it. When you never tell someone they are hurting you, when you constantly clean up their messes, when you refuse to hold them accountable, what are you actually saying to them? You are saying, I do not believe you are capable of handling the truth. You are saying, I do not think you are strong enough to grow. You are treating them like a child. You look at your partner or your friend or your parent, and you subconsciously decide that they are too fragile or too broken or too immature to face the consequences of their own actions. So you absorb the consequences for them. You protect them from reality. And then you have the nerve to be angry when they act like children. You built the playpen. You padded the walls. And now you are furious that they will not grow up. Connect those two things, and something becomes clear. Your silence is not an act of love. It is an act of control. By managing their reality by hiding your true feelings, you are controlling the narrative of the relationship. You ensure that you are always the good one, the reliable one, the one who never does anything wrong. You create a dynamic where they are always in emotional debt to you, even if they do not realize it. You use your suffering as a shield. This is the shadow side of the peacemaker. The peacemaker secretly believes that if they suffer enough, if they bleed enough, the world will eventually reward them. You think your pain is a receipt. You think you can take it to the register of the universe and exchange it for love and respect. But the universe does not accept that currency. The people around you do not see your silent sacrifices. They only see what you tolerate. They only see the standard you set for how you allow yourself to be treated. Every time you say it is fine when it is absolutely not fine, you are giving them an instruction manual. You are handing them a blueprint on exactly how to use you. And this is the part that changes how you see everything else. You cannot blame a dog for walking through an open gate, and you cannot blame people for taking advantage of a door you refuse to close. Yes, they should be better. Yes, they should have more self-awareness, but they do not. And sitting around wishing that human nature was different is a complete waste of your life. You are waiting for an apology that is never going to come. You are waiting for a moment of sudden realization where they look at you and say, "Oh my God, I have been taking you for granted all these years. Thank you for being so patient." That movie only happens in your head. It does not happen in reality. In reality, they are completely fine with the arrangement. The arrangement works for them. They get to act however they want, and you handle the emotional fallout. Why would they ever change? The only person suffering in this dynamic is you. You are carrying the weight of two people. You are doing your emotional labor, and you are doing theirs. You are exhausted because you are doing a job you were never hired to do. And the tragic irony is that by trying to be the perfect, accommodating person, you are actually destroying the relationships you are trying to save. Because true intimacy requires authenticity. You cannot be intimately close to someone while you are hiding your anger from them. You cannot build a genuine connection on a foundation of suppressed rage. The relationship you think you are protecting is already dead. It died the moment you stopped telling them the truth. You are just guarding a museum of a relationship that only exists in the past. Before we go further, there is something you need to understand first. You did not adopt this strategy because you are malicious. You did not decide one day to become a manipulative martyr. You did this to survive. At some point in your life, the cost of speaking up was too high. The punishment for having needs was too severe. You learned to fold yourself into a tiny, convenient box because that was the only way you felt safe. But you are not in that situation anymore. The survival mechanism that saved you back then is the exact thing that is killing you right now. You are driving a car with the emergency brake pulled all the way up, wondering why the engine is screaming. Wondering why you are burning out. The exhaustion is not a sign that you need to be stronger. The exhaustion is your body's alarm system. It is your soul telling you that this way of living is completely unsustainable. You have reached the limit of your false patience. The resentment is starting to leak out. You can feel it. You are becoming bitter. You are becoming cynical. You catch yourself looking at people with quiet disdain. The sweet, understanding person you thought you were is slowly rotting from the inside out. And that leads to a question most people never ask. What happens when the bigger person finally breaks? You already know the answer, because you have felt it happening. It does not usually happen in a grand cinematic explosion. It happens in the quiet moments. You snap at a cashier. You slam a door harder than you meant to. You find yourself consumed by dark, bitter thoughts about people you supposedly care about. You lay awake fantasizing about cutting everyone off and disappearing. You look at these flashes of rage and you feel ashamed. You think to yourself, this is not who I am. I am a kind person. I am a forgiving person. You push those dark thoughts back down. You lock them away because they scare you. You think that if anyone ever saw the amount of anger you are actually carrying, they would run away. But that anger is not a mistake. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a vital, necessary part of you that has been starved for air. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying this exact phenomenon. He noticed that the people who tried the hardest to be purely good, the people who constantly suppressed their darker emotions, were always the most miserable. They were haunted. Jung had a name for this hidden part of the human psyche. He called it the shadow. Every single trait you decided was unacceptable when you were growing up, your anger, your selfishness, your aggression, your capacity to say no, you did not get rid of those traits. You just threw them in the basement of your mind. You locked the door, and you built your identity in the rooms upstairs. You called the upstairs part of yourself the bigger person. You made it look clean. You made it look polite. But down in the basement, your shadow has been pacing, and it is furious. Jung understood something that completely shatters the way we are taught to live. He said that a person cannot be whole unless they integrate their shadow. He said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about what that actually means for you. You keep finding yourself in relationships where you are used. You keep finding yourself in jobs where you are overworked and underpaid. You call it bad luck. You call it fate. You ask the universe why this keeps happening to you. Jung would say it is happening because your shadow is trying to get your attention. Your unconscious mind is putting you in these situations, begging you to finally stand up and fight back, begging you to finally unlock the basement door and let your anger out. But you refuse. You keep choosing the upstairs room. You keep choosing the polite smile. We are taught that being good means being harmless. We are taught that being a moral person means never hurting anyone, never causing friction, and never putting our own needs first. That is a complete lie. There is no virtue in being harmless. A rabbit is harmless, but a rabbit is not moral. A rabbit simply has no capacity for violence, so it has no choice but to run. It is completely at the mercy of the world. If you are only kind because you are too terrified to be anything else, your kindness means nothing. It is just a survival tactic. True goodness, true morality, requires the capacity for danger. It requires the ability to bite back. You have to be capable of destruction and then consciously choose not to use it unless absolutely necessary. That is strength. That is virtue. Right now, you do not have teeth. You gave them away a long time ago. And the people who take advantage of you know exactly who has teeth and who does not. They can smell it on you. They can sense that you have completely disconnected from your own power. They know that no matter what they do, you will find a way to excuse it. You have to take your teeth back. This is the process of integration. This is what it means to step into the mud. It means opening that basement door and looking at the parts of yourself that you find ugly. You have to accept your capacity to be selfish. You have to accept your capacity to be demanding. You have to accept that sometimes you need to be the villain in someone else's story in order to be the hero in your own. Let that sink in. Someone is going to think you are cruel. Someone is going to think you are ungrateful. Someone is going to tell other people that you have changed, and they are not going to mean it as a compliment. Can you survive that? Can you survive being misunderstood by the people who used to benefit from your silence? If you are in your 20s or 30s, your entire future depends on your answer to that question. You are at the exact point where patterns solidify into destiny. The person you are dating right now, the boss you are working for right now. If you do not learn how to disappoint them, you will spend the next 40 years disappointing yourself. You will build a life that looks perfectly peaceful on the outside and feels like a prison on the inside. You have to stop being afraid of the collapse. Let the uneven relationships collapse. Let the one-sided friendships burn. What you lose in comfort, you will gain in reality. And if you are older, if you have been doing this for a lifetime, listen to me very carefully. It is not too late. Yes, you have lost years to this illusion. Yes, there are people in your life who have grown deeply entitled to your endless sacrifice. You have adult children or a spouse or siblings who simply expect you to absorb their stress and fix their problems. The hardest thing you will ever do is change the rules of a game you have been playing for 30 years. When you suddenly stop being the shock absorber, they will panic. They will push back. They will try to make you feel guilty. They will use every trick they know to force you back into your old role. They will say you are being cold. They will say you are abandoning them. Let them say it. You have paid your dues. You have carried their emotional weight for decades. You do not owe them the rest of your life. Integrating your shadow means finally looking them in the eye and saying no, and then sitting in the uncomfortable, deafening silence that follows. Do not explain yourself. Do not apologize. Do not soften the blow. Just let the word hang in the air. No. That is the sound of the basement door opening. When you stop trying to be the bigger person, you finally get to be a real person. Real people have limits. Real people get angry. Real people demand respect, and they walk away when they do not get it. You have spent so much time trying to be a saint that you forgot how to be human. Saints are dead. They are carved out of stone. They do not feel anything. That is why they are so easy to worship. But you are not stone. You are flesh and blood. You have a nervous system. You have a heart that beats faster when you are treated unfairly. Stop ignoring your own biology. Your anger is your friend. Your anger is the part of you that knows you deserve better. It is the part of you that loves you the most. Every time you suppress it, you are betraying the only person who will be with you from your first breath to your last, yourself. Think about the sheer amount of energy you have wasted trying to manage how other people see you, trying to make sure they always view you as the reasonable one, the accommodating one, the mature one. Imagine what you could do with your life if you took all that energy back. Imagine how light you would feel if you stopped translating their disrespect into excuses. If you just looked at their actions and said this is unacceptable and then walked away. No long arguments, no desperate pleas for them to understand your side. Just a quiet, absolute refusal to participate in your own degradation. That is not being petty. That is self-preservation. The next time you find yourself in that familiar situation, the next time someone makes that passive-aggressive comment or expects you to clean up their mess or dismisses your feelings, notice the heat rising in your chest. Notice the words forming on your tongue. This time, do not swallow them. This time, do not run the calculation of how to keep the peace. Let the peace shatter. The peace was always a lie anyway. It was a hostage situation masquerading as harmony. Speak the truth. Let your voice shake if it has to. Let your hands tremble, but say it. Tell them they crossed a line. Tell them you are done carrying their weight, and then watch what happens. The world will not end. The sky will not fall. The people who genuinely love you will respect your limits. They will adjust. And the people who only loved what they could take from you, they will leave. Let them leave. Hold the door open for them. Their departure is not a loss. It is the highest return on investment you will ever get. You have been terrified of the emptiness that might come if you stop being the one holding everything together. But that emptiness is not a void. It is clearing the stage. It is making room for the version of you that does not have to beg for basic human decency. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You cannot become who you truly are while you are wearing a mask of infinite patience. You cannot become whole while you are amputating the parts of yourself that make other people uncomfortable. It is time to take the mask off. It is time to let people see the anger. It is time to let people see the exhaustion. It is time to stop protecting them from the reality of their own actions. You have carried the burden of being the bigger person for long enough. It has broken your back. It has drained your spirit. It has given you nothing but a quiet, bitter pride that keeps you warm for about 5 seconds before the emptiness sets back in. Drop the pride. Step off the pedestal. Come back down to the earth where the real living happens. It is messy down here. It is loud. People will bump into you and you will have to push back. You will have to fight for your space. But for the first time in your life, the space will actually be yours. You will not be borrowing it. You will not be renting it with your endless compliance. You will own it. You have nothing left to prove to anyone. You do not need to show them how mature you are. You do not need to show them how much you can endure. Endurance is only a virtue when you are carrying something worth keeping. What you have been carrying is just their disrespect. Put it down. The next time they ask for more than you can give, the next time they expect you to fold yourself in half to make them comfortable, you know exactly what to do. You don't need to explain yourself. Not to them. Not anymore.